Welcome to Election Island. I'm Callum Taylor, and in a minute I'll be joined by the wonderful Ben McLean and Sarah Dalal. As you all know, England, Wales, Scotland have all been voting today. The results are still pouring in, but we have a general picture of the state of play, and that is the Labour Party in utter crisis. Who would have guessed? With reform sweeping up across the country. The Green Party have also made some fantastic gains. The full results won't be available until tomorrow, but as of right now, these are the latest. So we've got Reform on 1,362. Labour 874, the Lib Dems on 807, the Conservatives on 721, the Greens on 447, and other parties on 198. These were as of about an hour or so ago, but these keep updating by the minute, so those numbers have probably changed already. In fact, I know they have. So those were numbers of seats that the parties have in total. As you can see, Labour have lost across the board, with Reform completely dominating, which is something that I think we were probably all expecting. This is how Keir Starmer responded.
We have lost brilliant Labour representatives, people who put so much into their communities, so much into our party and our movement. And the voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. Labour was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos.
They want to change you.
Well, they've sent a message that the change that we promised isn't being delivered in a way they can feel, and also, frankly, they're fed up with years of the status quo. But we were elected to deal with those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from that and to plunge the country into chaos.
Did you contemplate that the problem might be you, that you might need to go to help Labour win these seats back? Did you even contemplate it? Did you acknowledge it as a conversation even?
Look, I think it's absolutely clear that the electorate are fed up with the fact that their lives aren't changing quickly enough. And this has been going on for a very, very long time. I think that we were right to emphasise to the country the difficult inheritance we've had, the challenges we face, but we haven't done enough to convince people that things can improve, their lives can get better, the hope. And I'm not going to walk away from that challenge. We made a number of calls which were the right calls in terms of stabilising the economy, investing in our public services, and not getting dragged into the Iran war. But we also made unnecessary mistakes. And my job now is to set out the steps that we will take to bring about the change that people want and deserve.
PM, to be clear, you are not going to resign.
No, I'm not going to walk away and plunge the country into chaos. We were elected to deal with these challenges, and that's what we will do.
Now, Starmer there talks about strong Labour candidates. He talks about candidates who have unfortunately lost their seats, who are decent, hard-working Labour candidates. And you know what? He's right. He is right. I saw it firsthand at a count that I was at myself last night. Up and down the country, there are Labour councillors, true Labour councillors that have been, Labour councillors for many years. The real sort of socialists, the type where the red blood of socialism runs through their veins, and they've been Labour when it was truly what Labour was about, and they're losing seats to paper candidates of Reform UK's that have been huddled together, thrown on a ballot paper, and then voted in by the electorate on national issues. And it's really fucking frustrating, because what we're seeing is an influx of Reform UK candidates. And yeah, Labour were always going to take a hammering. But what makes me really, really sad is in local elections where people should be voting on local issues, the local candidate matters, in my opinion, more than the party, especially when they are experienced candidates. And for Keir Starmer to talk about how disappointed he is that, really good Labour candidates have been losing their seats. And to also say he takes full responsibility for the result of these elections. But then to say, well, I'm not going to resign. And, people want change and they voted me for change. And then Beth Rigby puts to him, well, hang on a second. Are you sure it's not you that's the problem? And to sit there and go, no, 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 I'm not going to resign. It's not about me. It's not about me. It makes me physically sick. And it is a complete disservice and actually a slap in the face to all those hardworking councillors within the Labour Party, because there are some, there is still a lot of politicians within the Labour Party, particularly at a local level, that are true socialists, who have been in the party through thick and thin, and for whatever reason, because their roots go so deep, they feel as though they can't leave the party. And they and the people that they represent are being thrown to the wolves because of Keir Starmer's ego and the people around him who are so frightened of even something slightly remotely left-wing within the party that they would rather allow literal fascists to be elected than say, you know what, let's move slightly more to the left. But anyway, we'll talk a bit more about that later. Obviously, across these elections, there have also been elections for other positions, not just councillors. There were also 6 mayoral races as well. Now, Jason Perry was re-elected as the Croydon mayor. The Greens have won two mayoral races. Zoe Garbett was elected as the mayor of Hackney, a place where it's been nothing but Labour. And Liam Shrivastava wins in Lewisham. Now, the Lewisham win was one that was not completely unexpected, but certainly, the target for the Green Party was Hackney. Newham also returned a Labour mayor, but with a new candidate, Farhad Hussain, and Lutfur Rahman from the left-wing Aspire has been re-elected as well. Peter Taylor from the Liberal Democrats was also re-elected too. Now, speaking of Hackney, this was the moment that Zoe Garbett was elected mayor in an historic win for the Greens.
She is now the Green Party's first mayor. She is now the new mayor of Hackney, and here she is.
I just want to start by saying thank you to everyone who made this election run so smoothly. Thanks to Bruce and his team and Dawn for all your leadership. Today, we start the fight back. In this election, over and over, people kept telling me that they felt let down. People kept saying it's hard for me and it's hard for us. Council services are failing those who need them most, and people are struggling to make ends meet. To everyone who voted for me, I truly thank you for putting your trust in me today. I've always stood up against injustice. For over a decade in the NHS, being a councillor in Dalston to sitting on the London Assembly, all the work I've ever done has been to change the system and services that let people down, harm people and widen inequality. Our borough is home to over 250,000 people. So many people are being failed by the government and the systems, whether it's parents, migrants, trans people, disabled people and young people. The list goes on and on. Across London and the country, people have made it clear that they are desperate for an alternative to this failing Labour government. It's not old politics parties versus new parties. This is about a system of fear versus a movement of hope. Hackney voters have said loud and clear that they are sick of politicians putting profit before our planet and for supporting genocide and letting down so many people who are struggling.
A system of fear versus a movement of hope. That's Zoe Garbett. And instead of Labour looking inward, Steve Reed, the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, responded to this win with more smears.
The first Green mayor. She's the new mayor of Hackney in North London. Steve Reed is still with us. I mean, this is a Labour stronghold, isn't it? You won very well last time, a huge share of the vote last time, a huge turnaround in fortunes for you now.
Well, congratulations to her, first of all. She's won an election, and now she will be in charge of Hackney Council and running its services. And I wish her well in doing that. All of us do who care about Hackney and the other boroughs across London. But, you know, the Greens have had some pretty strange candidates. In the borough that I used to lead, 2 Green candidates have been arrested for stirring up racial hatred. There's been some pretty strange things going on because, as Zack Polanski has said, he didn't bother to check the backgrounds of some of the people they put forward for election. And whereas, you know, yesterday some of those people were candidates, today some of them will be councillors, so in charge of public resources and decision making.
Yeah, I mean, Labour really have the moral high ground on not doing background checks on people, don't they? I mean, Mandelson, anyone? There's also been a lot of talk over the last 24 hours or so about vote splitting. Yes, we're hearing all that bullshit again. Sky News caught up with Zack Polanski during the day, and they asked him whether or not the Greens split the progressive vote. Embarrassingly, in Keir Starmer's constituency, the local party leader lost.
Yeah, we've had the first big shock result from here in Camden. The leader, or who was the leader of Camden Council, the Labour leader, has failed to win a seat. Richard Olszewski had actually swapped seats. He'd done what critics and even some in his own party called a chicken run by abandoning his seat in Fortune Green in sort of the West Hampstead area, the kind of north of the patch. And he'd come down to stand in Holborn and Covent Garden because that was seen as a safer bet. Now, he hasn't lost to the Lib Dems, but he has lost to the Greens. The Greens have taken all 3 seats in that ward, and it means that now former leader of Camden Council hasn't got a seat. So there's a sort of cruel irony here that he had justified.
I put the blame squarely at
Sorry. I was just talking about how embarrassing that was for Keir Starmer's constituency there. I think we've got a video of Zack Polanski's interview as well. We will just see if we can get that.
In many places.
Yeah.
In many places, your biggest contribution might be splitting the progressive vote, paving the way for reform. Are you comfortable with that?
I would reject the idea that the Labour Party are a progressive vote. The Labour Party, since they got into office, have continued austerity. They tried to cut disability benefits. We had more children going into poverty for far too long. They brought Peter Mandelson into the heart of government, and we've seen an ongoing genocide in Gaza. So the idea that this Labour government offers any kind of progressive politics, I think, is for the birds. And actually, anyone who's on the left in politics, progressive, or even just wants a politics of common sense, where we're redistributing power and wealth away from multimillionaires and billionaires and putting it back into our communities, that's a vote for the Green Party. And what I'd say to anyone is we need your help, and today is a brilliant day to join the Green Party.
OK, strip away the label progressive. You might be splitting the left vote and paving the way for reform. Are you comfortable with that?
I still reject the idea that the Labour Party are in any way a left-wing party. Keir Starmer was a man who echoed the words of Enoch Powell. We've seen in Shabana Mahmood increasingly anti-migrant rhetoric, and as I've said, we've had the ongoing genocide. I think a left-wing government, or anyone who wants to change anything in this country, would look at how much communities are suffering right now, and they would work to end rip-off Britain. We have this toxic combination of low wages and high bills, and it feels like the Labour government haven't done anything to get a grip of that. The first thing they should be doing, for instance, is freezing energy bills. It's outrageous that we've got this illegal and unpopular war, and there are people working 2 or 3 jobs who are going to be having to pay even more for their energy bills that they just can't afford right now. We need to make sure we have elected Greens in office who actually look out for people who are working so hard and aren't being rewarded for how hard they're working.
Now, Labour have obviously prepped us for this because they've talked a lot, haven't they, in these elections about, excuse me, about vote splitting, and they've talked a lot about, you know, only a vote for Labour can stop reform. If you vote any other party, you're splitting the vote. Yet the Greens are taking councils. I mean, there's one council they've taken where they took all 31 seats from Labour from nothing. They had nothing. The Greens had no seats, and they've taken 31 seats. This was in one of the London boroughs from Labour, and now have control of the council. But let's talk about, you know, splitting the vote. On the subject of Labour losing, of course, Labour continues to lose throughout the north, a former stronghold that. Yeah, I think we've got video 5. I've got Sarah in my ear. But yeah, they continue to lose throughout the north, which obviously was a former Labour stronghold, which has now turned Green and Reform.
Before, I think they're really handy in terms of just giving you a sense of the change in the political geography that we're looking at right now. 2023, so the last time these seats were all up. Look at the map. Look at the map of Manchester, ward by ward. And now look this time around. Just look at how much that's shifted. Look at how much green there is. Look at how much turquoise there is for Reform. And there's still some pockets of Labour, but just the change here. And obviously this is happening gradually with these local elections. It depends on different parts of the country. In London, it's all of the members being voted for this. But this time around, it's just a third. But
so yeah, again, Labour being wiped out. Now, going back to the theme of splitting the vote that we talked about earlier, it's also been reported that your party are not happy with the Greens, specifically the mayoral election in Newham. Your party is not happy with the Green Party after Labour won the mayoral election in Newham. A source told me it's bitterly disappointing that the Greens split the vote and let Labour through, cited your party, standing aside in Gorton and Denton. Would hope this could be reciprocated elsewhere so we could unite to defeat Labour. I mean, this is the same your party that half of the people that were looking and hoping to be candidates in this election are currently now standing as independents again because they've all resigned, and many of them in Scotland that wanted to stand in the Scottish elections were told that they wouldn't be able to. Anyway, in that specific case, Labour won 25,538 votes, with the Greens winning 18,999 and the Newham Independents getting 20,234 votes. So that's why your party were upset about that. But over to Nigel Farage. Well, this was his response.
The pattern that's emerging over the country is that Labour are being wiped out by Reform in many of their most traditional areas, and what you're going to see later on today is the Conservative Party being wiped out in their heartlands like Essex. So London goes a bit against the trend in that the Conservatives and Labour have held up in some of the other boroughs. But I think overall what's happened is a truly historic.
He's not wrong. It is a truly historic shift. The two-party system is crumbling. Well, it's just becoming a different two parties, isn't it? But yeah. But that's obviously in England. Let's take a look now at the Welsh elections, where Plaid Cymru came out on top. Plaid with 43, Reform 34, Labour on 9, the Tories on 7, and the Greens with 2, who for the first time in history have Green representatives in the Senate, and the Lib Dems with 1 seat. Note that Plaid don't have an overall majority, however, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. It's also worth noting that the Welsh First Minister has lost her seat and as a result will be resigning. She will remain First Minister for the time being until they obviously find a replacement, but that resignation has already been announced today. The Scottish election results, let's have a look at those. So we've got the Scottish National Party, the SNP, on 56, with the Conservatives on 9, Labour on 8, the Lib Dems on 7, Scottish Greens on 7, and Reform UK on 5. Again, not quite giving the SNP enough there to form a majority, so we could see another coalition or a potential sort of supply and demand agreement with possibly the Greens, who they've worked with before, or perhaps the Lib Dems. We'll see which way the SNP choose to go there. So yeah, can we take that graphic down, please? Is that okay? Thank you very much. So it's been a day. It's been a day. Lots of really, really positives, though. I know I sound really disheartened. That's partly due to the fact that I was at a county in Chorley until 6:30 this morning and then spent most of the afternoon trying to hunt down Nigel Farage in St Helens, which didn't quite go to plan. He popped in for a quick media visit and then ran away back to Essex as quickly as possible. Didn't even bother to speak to his candidates that have just won the council there in St Helens, which I thought was a bit rude of him. But would we expect anything else from Nigel Farage? Probably not. Ben, Sarah, what a 24 hours it's been. Thanks for joining tonight. Ben, let's start with you. What's your general sort of takeaway from what you've seen happening over the last sort of 24 hours or so?
Obviously, it's awful that Reform have taken so much of particularly England, but it's not great in Wales either. Scotland is, I think, more or less as I expected. But to be fair, I expected Reform to do well everywhere. But it's a good place for the Greens to be in. I really do think these are good election results for the Greens. There's a couple of reasons really why I think that's the case. That's sort of the best of all worlds for the Greens right now, because they've become the tactical vote in so many areas. So many areas now the Greens are the challengers to Reform, which is great news. Reform now have to do the legwork in all of these constituencies, and they're going to be under increased scrutiny, even if not from the mainstream media, from alternative progressive media like ourselves, and from the Green Party themselves. And also, we've got the local government reorganisation coming, which is going to leave those new Reform councils in a position where they'll have a limited ability to make the changes that they would probably want to make, limiting the damage that they can do, but also basically handcuffing them to a sort of like a situation where they're not sure exactly what their budget is, and sort of like creating uncertainty with the local government reorganisation, certainly in England. And meanwhile, we're about to face a autumn and winter after the summer with the Iran crisis and food and fuel crisis. Who are they going to blame? Well, they're going to blame Labour, because Labour are currently in government, and they're going to blame their local authority as well for not being there to help them. And we can point out the ways in which the local authorities are failing to help them, things they're doing around fuel, whose interest they speak in terms of energy. And a lot of this comes down to how well can the Greens get organised. I think that's sort of where I'm at with it. Devastated about Reform, but the Greens are in an interesting place in England, and happy about Plaid in Wales, and the SNP in Scotland.
And yeah, and I agree. And Sarah, I'm just seeing that in the last sort of 90 minutes or so, Reform have taken 3 councils, 2 from the Labour Party, Wakefield in West Yorkshire and Sandwell in the West Midlands, and also they've gained control in Walsall as well, which had formerly held no party majority. That puts Reform with 1,310 councillors, which is an increase of 1,308. There was 2 that they were holding from previously. What do you think is the appeal of Reform right now? And do you think that it is an appeal, or do you think that it's like a repeat of what we saw in the 2024 general election, where actually they're getting in by default?
Yeah, I think what it is that we are living in a climate of really angry people that don't know where to put their anger. Like when we saw that map that we showed earlier of what was it, Manchester? I can't remember where it was. What Manchester used to look like, where it was really red, one green, and then now it's kind of just like this map of like so many different parties. People are voting Reform because Reform are just really good at sound bites. I think they're able to just pander to neoliberal ideas, and people are just lapping it up like there's no tomorrow. And I think that's where it's being placed at the moment. I am interested in these Reform-held councils. I'm not going to lie, I welcome it Because you're actually going to have them be held accountable for things. Like when you have reform held councils and you're asking them for things in your local area, as scary as it is, I don't want reform held councils, obviously. I don't want reform anywhere near me. I can't stand them. I'm so frightened. I'm so anxious today because I was looking at these numbers. I was like, fucking hell, it's going higher and higher and higher. Like, oh my goodness. But this is something that you can hold against reform eventually when these 2029 elections come into place, because you'll be like, well, you didn't do anything in my local area. Why should I then vote you in for the general election? So I think this will be the one opportunity where you'll actually be able to say, you failed on your promises in my local area. So
do you think people will buy that though? And the reason I ask is because last night I was at the count in Chorley in Lancashire. My very good friend of mine, Olga, was standing for the Chorley Southwest seat. She won, and we were really over the moon to be able to say that she became the first and currently only Green Party councillor in Chorley. But meanwhile, Reform got a number of seats in that vote, and are now the official opposition on the council. Labour were always going to continue to hold the council because they were only voting for a third of the council at the time, so there was no chance of Labour losing that overall control. But it's now put Reform as the official opposition. But 12 months ago, Lancashire, including Chorley, had county council elections, and Reform UK were elected in to run the county council. And over the last 12 months, they've not done a particularly great job. They've stopped new schools from being open. They've not fixed the roads like they said they've done. They've put council tax up when they said they would freeze it. And despite all of those things, people in Chorley, in some areas, still went out and voted Reform.
Well, do you not think also as well, it's the way that mainstream media just keeps obsessing over Farage? Like, I think people actually might think they're voting for general election stuff here. Like, I think people are voting based off of general policies that are in Reform's manifesto, was previously in the manifesto, that's about immigration. And it's like, well, actually, we're looking at local issues here. This might be one of the issues that you have in your local area, but I think many people are actually angry about funding for SEND kids in schools and the potholes they keep having to face, and the fact they have to keep fixing their punctured tyre every so often. But people are struggling to discern the difference because they're so angry at national issues. I think they don't even know where to place their issues in the local area. But I do think mainstream media is obsessing and has been obsessing for the longest time with Farage, with Reform, and then the way that they've been attempting to smear the Greens has been utterly insane. When we saw Zack Polanski's votes in terms of popularity drop, it was because of the ridiculous smears that were happening left, right and centre. And I think that's at the back of people's minds. They're like, oh yeah, the hypno boob guy, yeah, I don't want to vote for that guy, but fuck it, I'm going to vote for the guy that's backed by billionaires and probably is tied to, well, it's not confirmed, but the Iranian regimes with some of these donors. Like, it's fucking insane. So I don't really know what's going to happen going forward, but I think people are angry at national issues and then are forgetting that their local issues matter too.
And I definitely think there is an element of that. And having spoken to people on the doorstep, there are definitely people who didn't quite understand. Obviously, knocking on doors in Chorley, for example, it's Lindsay Hoyle's parliamentary seat. He's the speaker. Many people were saying, well, there's no point in voting because we can't get the speaker out. And it's like, but you're not voting for a national. So there is an element of that. But that said, I mean, Ben, just following on from Sarah's point there, Reform don't really campaign on local issues. In fact, a lot of the leaflets that I've seen in different areas up and down the country that were up for election, they don't even mention the local elections. In fact, many of them didn't even say vote Reform on the 7th of May. And I mean, one reason for that is because if it's not specific to a local election, then it doesn't have to go through the local party's election expenses. It can go through the national party's expenses instead. But Reform are just campaigning on national issues, aren't they?
I think they rely heavily on Nigel Farage, and I think that's one of their three core weaknesses. Like they've got three core weaknesses, I think. One is that they're a one-man show. Nigel Farage. If the Greens and Plaid and the SNP and other progressive parties, your party, and to a degree, some Lib Dems, I guess, can put forward a case against Nigel Farage. If they can create a situation where Nigel Farage's image no longer holds, then they will essentially destroy Reform from within because they're a one-man show. You bring down Nigel Farage, you bring down reform. And perhaps the second biggest weakness is Trump, their connections to Trump. Trump is not popular in the UK, and the more people know about Trump's connections to Nigel Farage, the harder it is going to be for them to govern. And the third weakness is that they are very inexperienced in local government, like hilariously inexperienced, and prone to scandal and calamity as well. Like Reform UK keep having to have councillors stand down for all sorts of reasons, which, you know, we won't get into too much, but basically they're pretty calamitous in their structure. Just zooming in on the leafleting thing, because we need to be able to understand our enemy in order to be able to attack our enemy. There is a website called electionleaflets.org which people can go to, where you can look through Reform's material, you can look through the Greens material, and people will upload leaflets from their local area to that particular website. There were yesterday there were roughly 16 leaflets uploaded in the Reform section, so you can have a look and see what they're doing across the country and how they compare with each other. And I'd encourage local Greens, any local Greens that are listening to this, to pay attention to that, but also pay attention to what their strategy actually has been. They've been paying companies to deliver their leaflets for them. Even though they have a mass membership, they haven't asked that mass membership to deliver the leaflets in the same way the Greens have, because they can afford to. Obviously, the Greens are in a very different situation. And if you calculate it, so the rules for local elections state that you can spend £960 plus 8p for every member of the electorate in that area. So, for example, if there were 5 of us in the region, it's a very, very small region somewhere in, I don't know, rural Norfolk or whatever, and it's only us 5 members of Turn Left, they could spend a total of 40p persuading us, right? Because it's 8p per, or actually it's £960 plus 4p, but you get the idea. So when you've got hundreds of thousands of people in a constituency, you're talking about being able to spend thousands, tens of thousands of pounds, depending on how many hundreds of thousands it is. And that's the case for county councils. And so what Reform seem to have done is they seem to have done mass leafleting by taking that, you know, whatever it is, £10,000, and deploying it in a constituent, or, you know, £5,000, £10,000, and deploying it in such a way that they spend their money on like delivering these leaflets. There are weaknesses in that strategy that we can exploit. But there's also things we can learn from. That very tightly controlled communication is something the Greens need to learn from, and talking to people directly is something that the Greens need to learn from, in the sense of like delivering leaflets directly to them, and talking very directly to them, rather than in the run-up to an election, sorry, Zach, but in the run-up to an election, talking to the media. Do not talk to the media in the last 2 weeks before an election. I just don't think it's a good strategy. Oh, Callum, you're muted.
Sorry. I know that's been a bugbear of yours that over the last 2 weeks.
Can't hear you, Callum.
You can. I've unmuted. Surely you can. Can you not hear me, Sarah?
I'm lagging. Okay.
Oh, Sarah's fault. She'll be back. Yeah. So as I was saying, it's been a bugbear of yours, that, hasn't it? Not talking to the media. I think there's just to touch on that for a minute. I think there's definitely some argument to be made there. Although I would push back slightly in the fact that Sophie Ridge went on and on and on at Richard Tice today about the fact that Nigel Farage still hasn't allowed anyone to sit down and actually properly scrutinise him over the £5 million donation / gift, and people do see that. Now, there's a separate argument about whether or not Zack should be apologising all the flipping time, which I suppose is one that we'll get onto. But in terms of just the media appearances themselves, I'm not so sure. I think it's all right, because what it shows, and I mean, people have, just to touch on something else that you said before, people were definitely listening to some of those smears over the last week or two. I was doing some telling outside of a polling station yesterday, and I did actually speak to a woman. She approached me afterwards, and wanted to, obviously I wasn't asking people because you're not allowed to ask people, but she came over to me and she told me that she'd voted Green. She saw my rosette, told me that she'd voted Green, but she also said that she did so reluctantly. She said, I voted Green. She said, but I've been horrified by what I've been reading in the papers and seeing on the news the last couple of days about Zack. And I think it's really, really out of order, really unacceptable. And if there'd have been a Liberal Democrat candidate, I would have voted for them. The only reason I voted Green was because I couldn't. But then just quickly, Sarah, but then she went on to say, and obviously she said, I'm not, I'm going to be honest. Obviously, I don't always believe everything that I read in the papers. However, it is getting a little bit silly now, or words to that effect. And unfortunately, some of these smears, even though they are fucking ridiculous, and I mean all the memes that we've seen following them have proved that, but some of these smears have, for whatever reason, cut through, and we saw that with the massive plummet in the approval rating for Zack right before the election.
Can I just say something really quickly, because I don't understand this. Like, people are more horrified by Hypnoboobgate and the retweets, but I just think, call me controversial, I think the most controversial thing is being backed by these rich elites, these billionaires, not knowing where these donations are coming from, and actually having people who do not represent the majority of people in this country that have not that much power. Working class people don't have much power in this country. We have to constantly battle with this, well, I want more money so I can pay my rent, and I want to be able to pay for my fuel, and I don't want nurses being at a food bank, I don't want 3 children being in poverty. How are people not angry at the right things? Like, you're actually angry at headlines trying to smear someone on the basis of hypnoboobs and not actually on legitimate things. I don't get, like, what's the smear about with Zack?
I think where it comes from. I mean, the most recent ones, obviously, with Zack, were that he lied about being a spokesperson for the Red Cross. Well, he didn't. He hosted charity events for them, and he spoke for them. He just wasn't.
Fucking reach.
His job title just wasn't spokesperson, right? So I mean, there was that, and also it was on a fundraising. It was on a crowdfunder for his deputy leadership bid. Like, it wasn't like he'd put it out on a formal, like, open to the public election page or something.
Right.
But also like I think what it boils down to, though, is people read the headline and they don't read past that. And I think one of the reasons that for many people it seemed to cut through, and I know what Ben's going to come in and say in a minute, and I'll come back to you, which is that, by apologising he's made it worse, but which we could talk about. However, I think partly what it is also about is that Zack is obviously has said from the beginning, he wants to do politics differently. He believes in integrity. And I do honestly think, if you watch him and if you listen to him, and this is why he does apologize for things. He doesn't actively say, I am sorry this happened, but he says, yeah, all right, I made a mistake there. I said the wrong thing, which then is twisted to say, well, Zack Polanski apologized, therefore he must be guilty. But other politicians don't own up to their mistakes, and they also get a lot of shit for that. And it does feel to me a little bit like it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Go on.
Well, not even close. Like, this is the thing. Other politicians, Nigel Farage, for the scandals, the numerous scandals he's been involved in. I mean, making gas hissing sounds when he was in school, like a child with that sort of reputation, 30-odd witnesses saying that he, was anti-Semitic, including those saying that he made gas hissing sounds at Jewish, classmates. And that he would, he was a supporter of the National Front and all this in his school days. That's far more scandalous than anything Zack's done. But Nigel Farage doesn't entertain it. He goes, that was 30 years ago. Are you really doing this when, British people are being forced out of their communities by all these migrants coming, or whatever his line is, right? And the Greens need to be good at doing that. Just compare the £5 million to the Red Cross non-story and how much each attention has got. Yes, Richard Tice got grilled, but Richard Tice is not the man they depend on, right? Richard Tice did get grilled, but in terms of the amount of attention that story got, because the media were able to get so much more out of the Red Cross story because Zack kept appearing on TV at a time when you just shouldn't be appearing on TV. I'm going to come down hard on this. I think in the last 2 weeks leading up to an election, you should not be appearing on TV as the party leader. You should only be releasing tightly controlled messages that allow you to bridge across to different subjects, and also you have to don't apologise. Do not apologise.
So are you
at any point.
Ben? Are you saying that what Polanski needs to do is be more like Nigel Farage?
Yeah.
I'm obviously deliberately being, funny about it because, like literally today, Nigel Farage came all the way to St Helens in the northwest, where Reform have just taken over the council, and he didn't even appear at the count. He didn't even tell his. I found out about it from a source that contacted me to say, oh look, he's coming to the area. This is where we think he's going to be. He didn't even go to the count. He didn't even appear and let his candidates know that he was coming. Instead, he rocked up. He went to a pub that he was at a couple of days ago when he came up prior to the election. Did a photo op with his own media team. Now, in fairness, there were other members of the media that were there and that turned up and filmed it as well. But it was him. It wasn't like questions from journalists. It was like do a bit to camera, film a statement, get a photo op with a pint in his hand in St Helens, and then jump in his car or on his train or on his private helicopter, whichever his preferred method of transport is, all the way down to Essex for this evening, and. He couldn't even be bothered, but I suppose this is obviously where Zack would absolutely go and see his candidates. But Farage couldn't even be asked to go and congratulate the people that had just won in St Helens when he was in the area. And I honestly think the reason for that was because he knew that there'd be other media there, and he wanted to try and avoid scrutiny. But that comes with judgment, and that comes with complaints as well. Like as well as Reform are doing today, and as well as successful as they've been, if you actually look at it, so the BBC did a projection. There's others, but the BBC did a projection just based on all the information that we have sort of currently and where we're expecting it to go now, and it has Reform UK on 26% of the vote, with the Greens in second place on 18%. This is if there were a general election and today's results were sort of, obviously take it with a pinch of salt. But what's really interesting for me about that, there was a time not that long ago when Reform were polling at 30%. And since then, they've only gone down. And it's really easy to look at all these numbers, and it's really easy to say, isn't it, as I did at the start of the show, isn't it terrible? Reform UK are doing really well. They've got all these councils, they've got all these councillors, they've got all these authorities. But actually, 2/3 of the country do not want reform. They do not want this crap. And even when Reform are at their most successful, well, actually, looking at this, you could argue they've already peaked. This is now them on the way back down. It doesn't feel like it because we're seeing them get elected everywhere. But in terms of vote share, by my calculation, Reform UK are less popular today than they were 12 months ago. Obviously, because of the electoral system and the fact that, we've just had the elections, obviously we're not going to, it doesn't feel that way. But in terms of actual share of the vote, they're getting 4% less of the vote share than they were 12 months ago.
But Callum, to your how do I phrase this? To your regular schmegular person, are they going to understand that Reform are down by 4% in the vote share?
No, they're not.
They won't. They're going to see blue, 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 and the way it's going to be framed in the media is going to be, look at how much Reform have surged through, like in their council seats and whatever.
True.
So everyone, I feel like, because I do think I don't want to like downplay everyone, because I think everyone does have a brain, and I don't want to like make it seem as if the people who are voting Reform are a little bit dim. I think people who are voting Reform are just frustrated, and there's lots of room for things to change, and that's why I'm feeling still very, very hopeful. I'm not disheartened by this, but I think your average person is still going to be like, but all of this blue, so maybe Reform do have something right going on. Maybe they do have some potential, and maybe I should be voting that way, because look at Starmer release the sausages. He can't even get his words out, and he's admitting to all of these blunders and these mistakes and their associations with actual nonsense and whatever. People have given up with Labour. I don't think Labour stand a chance really when it comes to upcoming things, but I really do wonder about the regular schmegular people who won't even know about the fact that Reform are down by 4% and Farage is actually not that popular amongst most people.
I think, yeah, that is partly true, but then also, I don't think it matters that they don't know that, because what we're seeing in reality is that they are less popular. So even if... Go on,
sorry, they're less popular. But what's changed in the past sort of 6 months? Like, what is it that's made the difference in terms of Reform's popularity? It's that the political messaging has changed from 2024 to mid-2025. The political messaging right across the board, in every sort of major party that was going on in the media, like pretty much without exception, was immigration bad, Farage is correct, the whole narrative is correct, those illegals are coming over here. It's a massive problem. When are we going to talk about immigration crisis, blah, 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 which is Nigel Farage's territory, right? And then in mid-2025, Zack Polanski breaks through on the scene, and suddenly there's talk about taxing the rich. There's talk about mainly taxing the rich, but just like inequality, and suddenly these things become okay to talk about again. And this is part of what I mean about the need to control the narrative, and you control the narrative by releasing tight comms. Everything is tightly organized, and you have a clear picture. Community wealth building, lowering people's bills, lowering people's rents, talking about those core bread and butter issues, the cost of living stuff. Like, all of this is so important. Like, it does just come back to that, like, because Sarah is right that in the big picture, people are just going to see a Reform win. But it is important that we bear in mind that the way that we put dents in that Reform win is by having clear, tight communication on the cost of living. We've seen it work with Zoran. And do you know something I've noticed? All of the places that I've seen big green victories in so far have really tight communication. Look at Hackney. Zoe Garbutt's communication has been amazing. Her social media has been amazing. Same with Lewisham. Lewisham Greens are the ones who are on the timeline all the time. You see their campaign videos. They've been doing it. They've been practicing it, and they've been doing it long term. It's not something they just picked up since the election was announced. Look at Lorna Slater in Scotland. She's an MSP now, I believe, for Edinburgh Central. The Greens first, I think. The thing that connects all of these people is they have a really good social media game. Now, it's not about the social media. You can't take centrist politics and just sort of like apply, or just like it's not about the social media itself. What it's about is that putting out good social media messaging in the long term forces you to get organized, united behind a message for that long-term communication, and it brings your best speakers to the forefront. It brings your best faces to the forefront, and makes you think about, okay, what's important to voters in our area? How can we hit them on the cost of living and all of this stuff that actually appeals to them. And we should be, I think, looking to Hackney, looking to Lewisham, looking to Lorna Slater to learn about how we build a strategy going forward. But the thing that connects all of these is that they are areas with really good comms. Like, it's so important.
I'll tell you what else though. So obviously, Zoe Garbutt was criticised for, blocking a letter praising the Mets' involvement with the Golders Green attack. Yet she won with, was it 45 or 46% of the vote for the mayoral election. And I think I'm just thinking about the conversation we were having earlier about like apologising and some of those attacks. Pardon me. There is also a pattern of where there have been scandals or smears, but fake scandals against candidates, the public. Yeah, all right. Some people are saying at the polling stations, or on the streets, on the doorsteps. There's some people are saying that they're buying it, but that isn't necessarily translating into elections. And one example is Preston in Lancashire. Right now, the local Green Party disintegrated after the 2019 general election. The Green Party only got up and running again in October, November of last year. They've won at least, I've not double checked more recently, but they've won at least 2 seats on the city council in Preston, and they've done 6 months worth of stuff in the local community. I think they did a litter pick, and then when the elections came around, they started doing a bit more campaigning. None of the candidates that were standing, I think, were expecting to win. Obviously, they were all ready and prepared to become councillors and to do the work if needed. But you've got the Greens winning seats in areas where they've previously had no ground game at all, or certainly for a long time. I mean, we saw it in that seat in London, where they got 31 seats. 31 seats from Labour. Labour were down 31. Greens were up 31. Everyone else stayed exactly the same. And this takes me on to what I'd like to talk about next, actually, if we can, which is the comments that we
Sorry, do you mind if I just on that one question about right, Zoe Garbett, right? You brought up the fact that I just had to check this. Did she apologise for the letter? Did she apologise for blocking the letter?
She didn't apologise.
Exactly,
she did
Ben.
not
That's what I was going
apologise.
to say. This is exactly what I was going to say. So Zoe did not apologise whatsoever, and look at what's happened, because she's not going to bow down. She's not going to be like, oh, sorry, yes, you're right. Because if she would have done, I actually do think that it might have been a different situation. I really genuinely think that people might have gone, you are wrong. Yeah. I don't see Nigel Farage apologise for shit. This guy doesn't apologise for anything. He's like, yeah, you caught me outside of Clacton again, but I'm not going to apologise for it.
In fairness, though, as Pseudonymous has just said in the chat, Zack didn't apologise either. Technically, Zack hasn't apologised. He has admitted, yeah, all right, I made a mistake. That isn't quite the same as apologising.
But that's still an admission of guilt. And I get why he did it. I get why he did it. An admission of guilt can still make people
right. But hang on, let's be fair here, because when Nigel Farage does shit like this, we'll come on our show and we will call him out, and we'll call him a liar, and we'll call him this and we'll call him that, and we'll say he should be being honest. Where's his integrity? He's got no integrity. And then in the same breath we're saying, well, Zack Polanski shouldn't admit when he's wrong either. I think there's a difference. I do think there's a difference between admitting you're wrong and apologising. I don't think the two things are quite the same. However,
but is the timing correct?
However, the media can spin admitting that you're wrong as an apology. Yeah. But we do have to have a conversation, and I think it's a fair conversation to have. Do we want to have more politicians who are not willing to admit when they're wrong? And something that I really, really admire about Zack, and yeah, it doesn't work for the media, because the media don't understand nuance, because they want to get everything into a 5-word headline, right? So it doesn't work for the media. But something that Zack Polanski is brilliant at, and that I really admire him at, is that he understands more than and tries to explain more than any other politician that I've seen, that nothing is black and white. And that everything that we hear and everything that we're told about and all the issues that we face as a country and as a nation and as a planet are nuanced and have nuance attached to them. And he is willing to go out on a media round 2 days before an election, for ill or for worse, or whatever the saying is, and say, yeah, all right, actually, I did write on that thing that I was a spokesperson. Because I was going out there, I was doing the job, I was standing on stage, I was representing them. And no, actually, yeah, no, you're right. Actually, it wasn't an official job title. I understand why it might have come across as that. That isn't what I meant. I wasn't claiming that I was employed by them. You know, it was just that's what you call people that speak on behalf of an organisation, right? But yeah, I made a mistake. I used the wrong word, and all man's up to that. And you know what? Fucking respect to the guy. No other politician does that. Keir Starmer said today he takes full responsibility for the elections. Oh, but he's not going to go. Like,
of course he's not
at
going to go.
At least Zack admits if he's messed up, and he's a human being.
Yeah,
and you know what? And it was the other one. Just quickly, because I know you might want to talk about this. There was the other one that I think it was yesterday, where he said that he admitted that he wasn't ready to be prime minister. But you know what? Again, I think that's fair enough, because he isn't ready to be prime minister. But equally, there isn't going to be a general election tomorrow. No. So rather than saying, "Oh, he's not ready to," like, I'm sorry. Was Keir Starmer ready to be prime minister? Was Boris Johnson ready to be prime minister? Was Liz Truss ready to be prime minister? Like, at least Zack's honest about it.
Yeah, I admire his honesty on a personal level. Like, I love Zack. He's a lovely guy, but it's not about the personal. Do you know what I mean? I think that there's a couple of things to play into here. Number one, I think it was H Bomber Guy I once heard say, yeah, but the thing about Galileo was that he was right? If Galileo had been wrong, no one would care. Do you see what I mean? Like, the difference is when Zack Polanski is doing it versus when Nigel Farage is doing it. Nigel Farage is doing it for his own self-interest. Zack Polanski is doing it as a strategy to further the good of people and the good of the country, because the further Zack Polanski goes, the more empowered ordinary people in Britain are. The further Nigel Farage goes, the more empowered tech CEOs, crypto billionaires, and the fossil fuel giants are, right? These are two very different goals directions that we're heading in. And it is worth emphasising that rather than back down, apparently the Greens have defended Garbutt's dissent to the wording of the letter, and they had a go at Labour, basically saying, because Labour had a go at them about it, and they said their statement ends by saying this shows Labour. They said they condemn anti-Semitism and all that, and they said at the end of the statement, this shows Labour are not serious about investigating why police failed to prevent these attacks after a series of incidents in the area targeting the Jewish community, i.e. that laser focus on Jewish safety that is actually what, if you want to dispel ideas of anti-Semitism, make it difficult for the mainstream media to portray you as anti-Semitic, you need to be laser focused on what actually makes Jewish people safe, and promoting Jewish safety outside of a context of Israel or Palestine. Which one do you side more with? Because Jewish safety has to go beyond that, which is the point of my show earlier in the week, right?
Yeah, which is fair. And I mean, I've just seen. Go on, Sarah.
Because a lot of people, I put a screenshot in the chat earlier, I think you guys saw it, but lots of people have this view, like staunch, hardcore Labour voters, thinking that in order to keep reform out of council seats, people should be voting for.
I'm going to come on to this in a second, Sarah. Yeah. Can
okay,
I just really quickly? I just saw a comment from MK that said, "We're trying to win, Callum. I don't give a fuck about nice or honourable." And I get that, and I do get that, and I agree to that with that to an extent, but I do actually think that right. Labour have had another record-breaking election. Not Labour, Christ. Well, I mean, yeah, actually, Labour have had a record-breaking election, a record-breakingly bad one. But the Green Party have had another record-breaking election last night. They've got two mayors. I mean, they were hoping for one. They've got two. They've got 2 seats on the Senate in Wales. They were hoping for at least one. They've got 2. You know, they're probably going to hold the balance of power in Scotland again. They've won seats that they've never even been in, which doesn't happen. The guidebook of how to win elections for the Green Party talks about the long campaign and all the sort of hours that you have to spend and the years that you have to spend working on an area, which is exactly what I've seen replicated with my friend in Chorley who's just been elected. I mean, they've been working that for 6 years and she's finally got in. And then you've got places in Preston, you've got places in London where they've won whole entire councils from literally nothing. And that shows that Greens are winning. And actually, people will have seen Zack on the telly over the last 2 weeks when he's in the midst of a political scandal if you believe what the media is saying. And he's gone, you know what, fuck it. The papers are printing shit about me. The Times are putting anti-Semitic cartoons and smears out against me. The Labour Party are going gung-ho on all the attacks. And you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to do the morning rounds and I'm going to let every single journalist ask me about these smears and I'm going to answer them honestly. And then Greens win seats. And every time there is an attack on Zack Polanski, the Green parties make more members. On polling day, they reached 230,000 members. This time last year, they had 56,000 members. Let's not forget that. So I do understand the concern about, well, is it the right approach or is it not the right approach? But I'll tell you what, despite the drop in his approval rating, what Zack Polanski is doing for the Green Party is clearly working. Like we can't deny that what he's doing. That doesn't mean it can't be improved.
I think this is it. It's great in general, but I think improving that, one thing that he could have done to make the last 2 weeks extraordinarily easier is done a strategy where he stays out of the limelight just for those 2 weeks, just in the last 2 weeks, because that's when the media are going to be most rabid, because all they want to talk about is the election, and all they want to do is have a go at party leaders, and they will not give the left a fair shake. Like, we know this, so why give them a fair shake? Instead, stay out of the media, and you've already got bold politics. You've already got a medium through which you can release tightly controlled political statements, because it's brave of him to go into the media, and he does it all the time. People know that he does it all the time, so he's already got that reputation for being brave and facing down the media. It is brave of him to want to do that, but in the run-up to an election, your comms have to be, particularly if you're on the left, because you're going to be held to such a ridiculously higher standard to people on the right or people in the centre. Your comms have got to be so tight. But if we look every time, you've got to redirect. And if you want to take another example, instead of Farage controlling his message, look at Zoran Mamdani. The example I always point to. Every time he does a media appearance, people are like, "Oh yeah, but what is your position on the Palestinian question?" And he's like, "Well, I believe in peace and justice for all people, but the people I'm most concerned about is the peace and justice of New Yorkers who currently can't afford their rent and can't afford," and that's why we're starting the community supermarkets, right? And just message discipline. It has to be 100%.
And I don't disagree, but can you point to a result in this week's elections that you could use as to argue that what he's been doing has backfired? Because I would argue, I mean, we've seen examples of it where people have actually come out and said, actually, you know what? I wasn't going to vote for the Green Party, but after seeing the way that Zack's been smeared and the way he's been dealt with it, I'm going to go out and do it because the guy's got integrity and clearly
they're going to do that anyway. The smears are going to happen anyway because he's a left-wing candidate. He's standing for election. Exactly. The smears are going to happen anyway. So the media are going to do that bit for us. We don't need to worry about that bit because the people who are watching and are going, "Oh, the media's smearing this guy a lot. He must be good." Like, they're already the smears are going to happen. He doesn't. But if
then if you're facing those smears head on, so the easy attack for Farage at the moment is, well, he's running away from scrutiny over the £5 million donation, whereas. And if Zack was doing the same thing, the media would make that argument. If Zack didn't go on and do the rounds, the media would say, and they would do it more, and they'd go after him even harder because he's a left-wing candidate. The media would turn around and they'd be saying to people, not only has Zack Polanski done this really, really awful thing, like, unplugging a USB without safely removing it first, but he's running away from scrutiny and he won't let us talk to him about it. That proves that he's guilty. And the double down even harder on it.
And then he can put out a tightly controlled video which begins with playing that clip of, I don't know if it's Beth Rigby, so you can put out tightly controlled video, let's say it's about the Red Cross, like it plays claimed to be a spokesperson for the Red Cross, isn't a spokesperson for the Red Cross, and then he can go, sure, the principles of the Red Cross, though, are the ones that I believe in. And the principles of the Red Cross are about helping the most vulnerable in our society. And that is why we are doing X, Y, Z to help ordinary British people, putting the working man first and foremost. And like you put that out there, and then you're giving the media a choice. They can either play the clip They can either quote the clip, which will have been carefully crafted, so they have to include your message about cost of living, or they can pretend that you didn't respond, all of which will go down better for you than appearing firsthand and trying to do message discipline live on air, which is much harder.
But we are.
I don't know. Sorry, Callum. I actually don't know if that works. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm all for media appearances, and I'm all for. I don't want soft politics. You know, I want aggressive politics. I think I've always been like that when it comes to the Green Party. I've always said I want more aggression. Years ago, I was always saying that because they were always so soft and tree hugging, and we're going to use our tote bags, and like that was a stereotype. That was a stereotype of the Green Party. And now there is more aggression, which I like. So soft politics doesn't work, but. What I don't think works as well, and we do have to go back to the things that they've attempted to smear Zack for, is that they still very much say, but he's the one that tries to hypnotise women to make their boobs bigger, and he's the one that still tried to do this. Even though Zack has responded a number of times to those ridiculous statements, those ridiculous headlines, a really old news.
But every time they do that, people roll their eyes because they're sick of hearing it and they know it's
not true. Actually, Callum, I don't agree with that. I think people.
But the numbers say otherwise, though, Sarah. Look at the votes.
I genuinely think people still think that the Green Party want to legalise all drugs.
Yeah, but those people are never going to vote Green, though. That's the difference.
I know, but that is.
But frankly, with all due respect, I don't give a shit what people that are never going to vote Green think of the Green Party.
No, but I do.
They're never going to vote for
it.
It doesn't matter.
I do think that there are certain things that you don't even have to respond to. When it comes to things like the Red Cross, I'm not going to remember that in a few months' time. I'll be so real with you. And I think many people will not remember that because it's actually not that deep. People are way too concerned about bigger issues than, was he involved in the Red Cross or not? It's not going to fucking land.
Apart from the woman that I met outside the polling station that said she wouldn't have voted Green if she had another option there.
I think you're wasting your time if you're speaking about
but Sarah, it does if it's hitting, and I literally
it's not landing.
But it is landing. I literally spoke to somebody at a polling station.
It only lands, I think, if you respond to that shit. If you're responding to that shit, then of course it's going to land. If you're literally responding to it, it will land. What does Farage do? £5 million, people aren't even fucking talking about it. People are literally being like, okay, £5 million. Farage ain't talking about it.
Yeah, but the people that vote Reform don't give a shit about that anyway. They don't care. He's had a £5 million donation. They're not interested in that. They don't care.
Because he's not talking about it.
No, but even if he was, they wouldn't care. You think Reform voters care he received £5 million donations? They don't care. They care about him stopping the votes.
The people, I think it's true to a degree that Reform voters don't hear criticisms of Farage because Reform media is tightly controlled. And they have their networks that they speak through, whether that's GB News, Talk TV, or Reform's own comms, putting letters through people's doors. They've got a tightly controlled media game. But also, I do think... Fuck, I forgot what I was going to say. God damn it. Wait, what were we just saying?
That thing's landing.
Bad things landing, responding to like the hypno. Oh yeah, that's it. Sorry, I've got it. Trump to Mamdani switches, right? Yes, you won't win over Reform voters by pretending to be Reform light. Just like the Democrats couldn't win over Trump voters by pretending to be Trump light. However, what they can do is put forward a cost of living first message and authentic, like community-based politics. That, like left-wing, genuine left-wing politics that you actually believe in, does stand a chance of winning over those people.
Agree. But there is a Venn diagram of those people, and some of those fall in the middle. But the people who get so outraged about the Red Cross thing or whatever, that believe that stuff, those I genuinely don't believe that those are the same people that fall in the other side of it, where they're actually Reform voters for other reasons, but they're actually they can be convinced by the cost of living arguments. Because there is a cohort of Reform voters who are voting Reform because they think they're anti-establishment and they want something different. They just want a different alternative. And the Greens can come along and really genuinely prove that they can be an alternative. And of course, there is a really weird crossover where some Reform and some Green voters, some Reform voters will turn Green. But I don't for a minute think that there's any evidence that those people are the same people who, complain to Owen Jones and say, we're not going to vote Green because somebody left a door open, or we're not going to vote Green because he hypnotized a woman one day. Like, I don't think
I think a lot of those people can still be won over by arguments that they think will affect them and their material conditions. I really do think it's there if they think that if they can be persuaded to see the world in such a way as we should lower rents and affordability. Like, if they can be persuaded to see the world in that way, and I think a lot of them can, then the smears come after that, and they're much less effective. Because if you're presented with somebody who you put your weight behind because you believe in their message about affordability, if somebody came out tomorrow and said, "Oh, Zohran Mamdani, I don't know." Said he was a member of the American Red Cross, and he wasn't. It turned out he was just doing, a spokesman's event for them. Nobody is going to give a shit about that. He doesn't need to respond to that because his message is all about affordability, and that sort of comes first. They are different scales of campaign, but I think the principle still works the same.
I agree.
If that makes sense.
I actually agree. I think we always have to bring it back to why people are angry in the first place. And let's just bring it back to the council seats for a second, because Reform winning council seats should frighten anyone who understands how political power actually consolidates. Because councils are not like on the periphery to politics. Like, they are not peripheral to politics. They are one of the main sites where I think ideology is made very, very practical. Like, people automatically, when they hear local elections, they're thinking, oh, my bins and potholes and parking permits and just civic life in general. But I think that's what actually matters, because councils will determine housing allocations and your planning permissions and social care provision and youth services and send provision, like all of these important things, transport infrastructure and community funding. If the Greens are consistently speaking about these things and speaking about the things that are impacting people's material conditions of everyday life, then I do think we can see a huge and even bigger shift when it comes to the Green Party. Historically, local government has always been the proving ground for national political projects, which is why I'm like, okay, cool, Reform Party, you've won some seats, great. Now, let's see how that manifests itself. Political movements root themselves in councils and these local communities. And I do think, when we think about the Reform Party, it's not been some spontaneous insurgency. This is actually a political consequence of 40 years of neoliberalism and the pandering to neoliberal ideas. We've hollowed out that social contract, and then we've left this massive vacuum for reactionaries to fill it. So I'm not surprised that Reform have been able to get the seats that they have, but I'm also not surprised that the Greens are gaining in the way that they are, because there is a vacuum at the moment. And if the Greens do not capitalise on that vacuum in the way that they need to, which is, and I'm still going to stand 10 toes down in this, not responding to things that I think don't need a response. I do think there's some things that don't require a response, because we always have to go back to, and if you are responding, do what Ben is saying and go back to the things that are affecting people.
I would agree if it were not for the fact that we're talking about the media, and I do think that there's I agree in principle with the argument. I really do, and I know we've talked about it. And just for the people in the chat, by the way, we're all friends. There's no hard feelings here.
Love each other all the time.
And our debates get as heated as this all the time. But
they do.
I do agree in principle, but I think we're. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the argument is based on an assumption that the media and the public will respond to the left the same way that they respond to the right, and that simply doesn't happen. Which I feel is why the left needs to respond, and they need to have it's the Michelle Obama thing about when they go low we go high. It's this thing of having to, the left have to be whiter than white. We cannot make we cannot make mistakes because Zack Polanski sneezes and he's not fit to be the leader of the Green Party. It doesn't matter.
More of a reason, though.
It doesn't matter that Farage is hissing at Jewish people, mimicking gas chambers. But if Zack Polanski doesn't say bless you to the right person, it's front page news and it's the worst thing ever.
But that's even more of a reason to tightly control your messaging and to make sure that you don't bring up the things that are weaknesses to you and apologize or it's not that you can't admit fault, but you have to be really smart about the language you use when you admit fault, so that you're saying, yeah, I was wrong about this, and here's our cost of living message. Right, everything is that bridging technique that you get taught when you do media training. It's like, here's the thing that the politician wants, the journalist wants you to talk about, and there will be a connector which leads you onto the thing that you really want to talk about, and that will connect with the audience. And that is essentially what we need to do. It's even more important because we don't get treated as well as the right do in the mainstream media, that we are tight with our message discipline, and that we're like super controlled.
Agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, and I suppose what. So it's not saying don't respond to it. It's saying respond to it in a controlled way
and bring it back.
Yeah,
bring it back to what matters.
Yeah, okay. So I said, which makes sense, and I suppose that means that still leaves room to sort of play the moral high ground and say, well, actually, I have owned my mistake, but I'm also going to explain it. And while I'm explaining it, here's a message from our sponsor about how awful the cost of living is.
Yeah.
No,
that go to some comments?
That makes sense. And well, before we do, I am aware of time, but before we do, I just wanted to talk about something else, which I know you wanted to talk about, Sarah, which was what we talked about earlier about vote splitting. I just want to read something that went out in the early hours of the morning from our wonderful friend. I say that we don't know him, Professor Sir John Curtis, the polling expert who appears everywhere, who usually has pretty good takes. He said this before we saw all the results, but I think having now seen more of the results, this is still bang on. He said it is clear that the Labour Party is losing plenty of seats to Reform. One might therefore conclude that it is Reform who are doing the most damage to Labour in terms of the vote. However, that is not the pattern that is emerging from the results of the in the BBC's key wards. This was John Curtis writing for the Beeb. He said a sharp fall in Labour's performance is accompanied more often by an above average Green performance than it is by a strong Reform performance, i.e. where Labour are doing badly, it's often that vote is often going to the Greens rather than to Reform. Meanwhile, it's the Conservatives who appear to be suffering most where Reform is advancing the most. Now, it should be remembered that Labour may often lose seats to Reform because it is losing votes to the Greens, while the Conservatives are losing votes to Reform. But the net effect can be that Labour end up losing a seat to Reform. So yeah, in terms of Labour's messaging and what needs to happen next, and it'd be nice if we can chat about that quickly as well before we go to the comments about what happens next. But in terms of Labour's messaging and what they do, we know that they're probably going to say, well, we need to be more like Reform and shift to the right. But it's clear that the people that are not voting Labour anymore, the place where Labour are losing the votes to, is the Green Party. And the most perfect example of that is that seat in London where the Labour lost 31 seats and the Greens gained 31 seats. But does that then mean, Sarah, that it is acceptable and correct for Labour to argue that if you want to stop Reform getting into power, you have to vote for Labour? Because if you vote Green, you let Reform in.
It's fucking weak. It's weak. It's a weak talking point. It's weak to say that if you want to keep Reform out, vote for a party or vote for a party that you don't resonate with at all. Vote for a person from a party that you don't resonate with or align with at all. Why should anyone in their right mind ever think about voting for someone or something that doesn't align with them in the slightest? It's insane. The reason why, you said this earlier, Caleb, the reason why Labour are losing the way that they are is because they have consistently tried to pander to the right, pander to the Reform voters, pander to the Tories, pander to the Tory voters and the Reform voters. And look where it's got them. It did nothing but make you do these ridiculous, avoidable blunders, pandering to neoliberal ideas again, and then also just like losing what Labour used to be. Because I do think Labour used to be a relatively okay party way back when. And obviously Blair fucked it and all this other stuff that happened, whatever. But anyone who says that, I think it's a lazy surface level analysis of what's happening at the moment, because what's happened again is that a vacuum has opened up and we've seen reactionary politics kind of fall into that, and Labour also fall victim into that. They have become just as reactionary and have started to pander to these ridiculous extreme ideals that don't resonate with people like us. So no voting for Labour.
I mean,
just keep reform out. It's not worth it.
As we pointed out earlier, two-thirds of the country don't want Reform UK. In fact, in many places, in the vast majority of places across the country, people are voting for left-leaning, and I use that word very lightly because Labour aren't really left-leaning at all, but more traditionally left-leaning parties than they are for the right, as has always been the case. So I mean, nobody can argue if you actually look at the data that the country as a whole doesn't want Reform UK. But we've got a broken first past the post voting system that means that they only need to get 24, 25, 26% of the vote to win seats, to win councils, to win MPs, etc. And an electorate that is so divided that, because of that system, they're now choosing between 5 parties instead of 2, and the result of that is reform. But and I'll preface this by saying I do not agree with this. By the way, I am completely of the belief that Labour are only and solely to blame for their own downfall. And if Nigel Farage is the next Prime Minister, Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, this iteration of the Labour Party, are squarely responsible. But to play devil's advocate just for the purposes of this discussion, there are people who would say you have to vote Labour because clearly, as we have seen today, in many places, the consequence of not voting Labour, even if you're voting Green or if you're voting for some of the independent parties, it is a split in the vote, and it does inevitably lead to Reform UK. And as people, as people who are anti-fascist, and as people who want to make sure that we don't see the likes of Nigel Farage become Prime Minister, people would argue, again, this is not my belief, that the only way that we can do that, and arguably the numbers would support it, is to vote Labour.
What split? What split? I have to ask people this because I saw these comments. I saw stories on Instagram basically calling people who voted for the Green Party idiots and even more egregious names because of the fact that they felt we paved the path to Reform getting the seats that they did. When actually you're absolutely right, Callum. The only entity that paved the path for Reform to get the seats that they did is actually Labour themselves. Labour have lost their whole character because they are no longer I hate this centrist idea, but centre-left party. They're just not it. So I do think as well we need to start pushing, because remember when it was when the US general elections were happening and people were like, well, I have to vote for the lesser of two evils. Fuck that narrative. Put it
on numbers, Sarah.
Exist.
But just to push this point though, on numbers alone, if you look in many of these seats that were formerly Labour seats that have been gained by Reform, if you add the Labour and Green vote together, that is higher than the Reform vote. So do those people not have a point on pure numbers? Forget the politics of it. On pure numbers, people that are voting Green instead of voting Labour in many seats, that is resulting in Reform UK winning a seat. And if we want to keep Reform, I appreciate it's not always been the case. And like I say, again, I'm making the argument for the sake of the debate.
Yeah.
But on pure numbers, they're right, aren't they? Because if you add Labour and Greens together, it equals more than Reform. So if those Green votes had gone to Labour, or in many places, if those Labour votes had gone to Green, Reform UK wouldn't have got in.
No, because I still think I'm let it happen the way that it needs to happen. Let it happen the way that it's happened. There is no split on the left. Like I refuse to even go under that narrative. So anyone who tries to say that, always nip it in the bud. And I think all of us will nip it in the bud.
So let the fascists in on matter of principle.
I think stick to your principles when it comes to voting.
Even if it lets the Nazis in.
I wouldn't want fascists in power. You're putting me in a very difficult predicament here. But
then you have to vote Labour.
But we already have a party in power that's allowing genocide to happen. So who has fascist ideals at this point? I do think the Labour Party have been really, really dancing with the right, freely dancing with the right, and this right-wing politics and this right-wing rhetoric that actually. You voting for Labour is a vote for that sort of stuff.
You know what I would.
You're complicit.
You know what I would say. Sarah. I would say that my response is actually Labour have had their day. They've proved that they can't do what they set out to do. And actually, if you're not voting Green, you're splitting the vote. So if you want to stop reform, rather than splitting the vote between Labour and Green, you have to vote Green. Because
Stop calling it splitting the vote of Labour and Green, because there's no split vote between the Labour and Green, because Labour and Green Party are they're two different entities.
But Sarah, there is, and I mean John Curtis has set that out. There is a split vote. Labour's voters are going to the Green Party. That means Labour are getting less votes, and it means the Greens are getting more votes. So there is a split. Now it's not necessarily a split on the left, as Zack Polanski talked about in the clip we watched earlier, because Labour are by no means left wing anymore. Like we're not, they are not comparable anymore. But in terms of numbers, there is a split. But my argument would be, if you don't want that split, you've got to vote Green, not Labour.
Yeah, I would say that this is the thing. Like the Greens are the tactical vote now, and this is why these election results are so brilliant for the Greens, is because they didn't come first in a lot of places, but actually it might have been a bit of a poison chalice if they had, because we're going to face a real energy crisis and a cost of living crisis in the coming months and the coming years, and you don't want to be responsible for that in any way. You don't want people to be able to point to you for that in any way, particularly if you want to put forward a cost of living message. When it came to the rise of the Nazis, by the way, the Social Democrats and the Conservatives, like the German National People's Party, the KPD, the Hindenburg, people like that, they all swapped power between each other, and it didn't do them any good. Re-electing Hindenburg would only put off the problem for so long when you've got problems of hyperinflation and people not being able to afford their food and stuff. There's a problem that often occurs in authoritarian structures, and Labour now is a highly authoritarian structure. The classic example of this is Stalin in the Great Purge from sort of 1937 onwards. Stalin created an environment, and the people around him, the Soviets, created an environment where nobody wanted to admit to the person above them that things hadn't gone well. So you had things like grain production, where they hadn't produced anywhere near as much grain as they said they had, but they would fill a barrel with sand, put down a layer of cloth, fill the top with grain, so that if an inspector looked in, they could think, oh, this is a full barrel of grain. Okay, that's how you would get away with saying we produced so many millions of barrels of grain. The problem comes, to sort of slightly bastardize one of George Orwell's quotes, 2 + 2 can't equal 5 when you're loading a gun, right? And when you're running an election campaign, it doesn't matter that Keir Starmer is convinced that the way to win over voters is to swing towards reform, and tell people, well, if you don't vote Labour, you're splitting the vote, because at the end of the day, that isn't going to work. They're already trying it, and it hasn't worked.
And also, I think these people also need to remember. And yeah, I know Labour aren't a left-wing party. I was playing devil's advocate because it would have just been three people making the same point otherwise. But I'll tell you what makes me laugh is that these people also forget that we're just doing exactly what Keir Starmer told us to do. Keir Starmer said, if you do not like the way this party is going, there's the door, you can leave. And since he said that, 58% of the Labour membership have gone, see ya, and buggered off. I am aware of time. We need to get to comments really, really quickly, and we'll talk about this in more detail on another show. But I just want to briefly touch on what's next. Starmer inevitably is going to have to resign at some point off the back of this. Will it be next week? Will it be tomorrow? Who knows? Some rumours are saying that the MPs are giving him till Christmas, which would make sense because there's NEC elections coming up in August, and once we've got a new group of people on the NEC, it opens the door for certain candidates like Andy Burnham to stand in by-elections and then try and take the leadership. On the point of Andy Burnham, very simple question. Just answer both of you whether you think yes or no, and maybe just give you waking out. Peel over your paper and all that, as they said to me in school. If Andy Burnham stands in a by-election, should the Green Party target the seat and fight against him? Yes or no, Ben?
I think it depends. It depends what he runs, what kind of campaign he decides to run. If he tries to run like a centrist campaign that attacks like the Greens' core principles, yeah, run against him. However, if he does like a fundamental change to a left-wing alternative, I'd be tempted to say, hey, let's not run against that because that's actually in line with our principles. That's what we want. The whole point of all of this is the long-term game of moving the Overton window back to the left because it's been swinging rightwards for far too long.
Sarah?
Well said. I don't think I could add on to that. I think that was brilliantly answered, Ben, and that's where I'm at with it too. Agreed.
Cool.
Okay,
I'm not so sure. So
what about you, Callum?
Yeah, no, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I think I agree with Ben partly. I think it depends. I think we have to be careful because we've also got to consider the fact that at the moment there isn't an obvious person to take over as Prime Minister, and I would rather have the Blairite Andy Burnham as Prime Minister any day of the week over Keir Starmer. Does that mean that I agree with everything that he's about? Absolutely not. Does that mean that I think he's a brilliant left-wing socialist? Absolutely not. Would that stop Reform getting into power at the next election? I think there's a hell of a lot bigger chance that Andy Burnham as PM would help Labour hold on to power at the next election, even if it was by the skin of the teeth, and keep Nigel Farage out of number 10. At the expense of one Green Party MP, is it worth it? Well, maybe not. But at the same time, in the long run, what is going to be better for the country? And, the Green Party principles of, wanting to protect the environment, wanting to help people with, cost of living and have social inequality. Those are things that are definitely not going to happen under a Nigel Farage-led government. So I think there's some serious questions need to be, and discussions that need to be had in the party about, what they do in those circumstances.
I can also understand that people might be like, oh, well, don't let Andy Burnham win because, like you say, the Blairite, the party's just going to swing back over to the right as soon as they've got power. But I think that would be a different circumstance because the right of the party would, at that point, I think, understand it's not just that you're tricking left-wingers, it's that left-wingers do have somewhere else to go. If you don't play ball, fucker, we're going to go over to the Greens.
I do think one really important point on Burnham, though, is that he has always been and still is an advocate for proportional representation.
Yeah.
And if Labour introduce a proportional system before the next general election, Reform UK will never see government, ever. And actually, we will all benefit from a PR system. Yeah. So, we'll see.
We'll see. Let's go to...
But yes, let's go to the comments.
Yeah, so if we start with super chats, I don't know what's happened to some of them. Sorry, I did see some, but now some of them are gone. Andrew, thank you for the membership. And then £20 from Coops. Thank you so much. Coops said, a great day for Greens, quoting from a guy on TV. We didn't leave Labour, Labour left us, and doesn't that show today, sorry. And I think we kind of agree with that, don't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well
thank
said.
you for the donation. Specs gifted £5 as well, so thank you. We usually hang out in the voice chat of the Discord after the show. All are welcome. Could a mod please post a link to the Discord? Welsh language being put in after. I don't know what it says, sorry. Andrew gifted £1 left membership. Thank you so much. £2 from Jim Speak that said, Hypno Boobs, Islamist guy is now Mamari Gaddafi.
Gaddafi.
Yeah. And Kate H42, thank you for the £10 donation. I agree with Ben in that it is a bit like feeding the trolls. There's this vague sense of negativity that the media tried to build up around Zack, and by osmosis, regular voters kind of absorb that.
Mm-hmm. No,
oh my God, can you see my face?
Yeah, we can now.
Oh, I'll go behind it.
We should have created a comment section for this, really, like a comment so that Sarah was lifted above the. No, absolutely. Fully agree with you there, Kate.
Agreed as well. Not
Good
really.
analogy.
Rachel Atwood said, "Has the mad dog caught the cart squirrel? Now what?"
That could be in reference to several things. It depends when it was said.
I don't understand
If we could clarify that would be great.
Yes, please. And then Autumn, spend this on Sudafed for Curtis. Get well soon, mate. Yeah, get well soon, Curtis. And then Coop said £5 for Curtis Lumsip. For Curtis
Lumsip.
Thank you for the donations. £5 from Jamie Alice as well, who said Reform councillors now have 2 or 3 years to show everyone how incompetent they are prior to the general election. In the long run, this could be a blessing. And I was kind of arguing this point, but I don't know how popular my opinion is, in that I do think this is going to be a really nice benchmark to see how well they do in their local council. Because I do think people care about housing, and I do think people care, like, who gets housed, and I do think people care about, you know, school provision and SEND provision and social care services. Like, I do think people care about that sort of stuff. And you do see the impacts of these things in your local communities, and also that sense of belonging in a local community.
The sad thing about all of that, though, sorry to interrupt, but the sad thing about all of that is that even if it's 2 to 3 years, as a result of these local elections, people are going to seriously suffer. And you know what's going to happen? Reform are going to turn around and they're going to say it's Labour's fault because they didn't give us enough funding when they were in government, because they don't like us politically, and it was a political decision. And the only way that you can fix that is to get a reform government. And people will fall for that shit, and they'll vote for reform and get the reform into government. And I saw someone on Twitter today who said that, you know, reform are going to have to be in power for 14 years like the Tories were before people realise that they are the problem.
Unless the Greens have a really strong communications output, unless the Greens reach out to organisations like us and say, how do you do your video production? How do you do your communication? And I'm not just talking about us, I'm talking about Novara Media. I'm talking about Joe Politics. Right, but we get out there and to be fair to us, a lot of our stuff, we encounter tech issues when we try to do stuff live, but the recorded videos that we do afterwards, the stuff that we edit, all of that stuff, we're quite good at. And what we need to be thinking is, how can the Greens fundraise to get the kind of equipment that we're using on a council, on a county level, so that they can deploy that
into local parties.
Into local parties, and just improve their communication, because communication is going to be everything.
They're working on it.
I also think comms is so important. Agreed. And also that sense of belonging in our local communities too. I think at the moment what we have are lots of disgruntled people who don't feel connected. And what we found, I see so many videos pop up every now and then of young people going to these protests where they've got the St. George's flag around their neck, and of course they're not the majority, but they just say it was just something to do, innit? It's just something to do.
But I was at a count this afternoon where you know, I mean, to be fair, it was a Labour person that I was speaking to, but he was saying that when inside the room, because I was outside, he was saying that inside a lot of the reform councillors that were being elected, you know, so they are now councillors, they'd never even met each other. It wasn't like they were part of like a local, like the local Green Party. Everyone in the party knows each other because they're always doing stuff together. They did litter picks, they did the events, they've leaflet free. Like these people in reform were getting elected this afternoon. They now have control of a council, and most of them met for the first time at the count today. Because they've not been out campaigning, they've not been out doing stuff in the local communities. But the problem is that the SEN provisions and the school provisions and the housing provisions and the roads and the bins and all the stuff that actually affects people's day-to-day lives are being run by those people now. And yeah, like I mean, I've made the same argument. Well, you know, people will see how shit they are and maybe they won't vote for them next time. But the counter to that is how many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people now are going to really suffer as a result of today's results.
That's also true, but also this is Keir Starmer's fault for going going past the 2024 general election and going, I must have won a majority because I'm so smart. And the way that I won that majority wasn't the Tories collapsing. It was because of my brilliant strategist, Morgan McSweeney, and I'll follow him into hell. Right, I'll follow him. I'll keep going to the right again and again and again. And if it doesn't seem like it's working, it's because we haven't done it hard enough. We haven't just gone to the right hard enough. And the stupidity of that strategy is what's put us in a situation where Reform UK are going to form the next government as things stand. But a lot of that depends on how well the Greens can communicate the problems.
You're so right. We got 199 from Monsieur Friedman, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for 10 Turn Left memberships. And then £2 from Steve that said, will this push Labour to do PR or discourage? What do you guys think?
If Labour in their current form, it will discourage them because they are so hateful of the left, in quotation marks, that they genuinely, I believe, would rather see a Reform UK government than do anything that would see an increase in the left. If Labour introduced proportional representation tomorrow, the next general election, the Green Party are going to do incredibly well. Labour will also do well. The Lib Dems will do well. Everyone will do well. It's PR, yay! But in all seriousness, the left will benefit significantly because as a country, on the whole, 70 to 75% of the electorate actually want broadly left-wing policies and politics.
They do.
But because we don't have PR, we end up with the right, and we're gonna end up with reforms, stuck with reform for the same reason that for many years we were stuck with the Conservatives, despite people mostly voting left. But Labour would genuinely rather see Nigel Farage be the Prime Minister than do anything that would benefit the left. So unless Labour fundamentally change and shift towards the left, and I do think somebody like Andy Burnham would be a good replacement in terms of the chances of getting PR. But if we don't see that shift, this is going to push reform to be this is going to push Labour, Freudian slip there, to be harsher on refugees, harsher on trans rights, harsher on immigrants of all backgrounds, and even harsher on smearing decent left-wing people as being anti-Semites, despite the fact they're in a party run by a Jewish man, and any other form of attack that they can find against those people on the left. Because they think that that's going to make Reform voters go, oh, you hate the Greens too. All right, we'll vote for you.
Yeah, they are also, just because of their authoritarian structure now, they're just fundamentally incapable of introspection and looking at the situation and going, okay, this might result in a Reform government. Of course, a lot of the people at the top, like you say, they don't care. They would rather have a Reform government. And by the way, I think this is Labour's largest majority since the mid 90s or something. I think it's certainly the largest majority since 1997, going back a bit.
There was a non-binding opposition day motion on PR about 12 months or so ago, and Parliament overwhelmingly voted in favour of it, just on the whole, not just Labour, loads, because basically every party apart from the Conservatives and some in Labour are pro PR because they'd all benefit from it.
Yeah, but
reform were until they realised that actually win more seats on the first past the post because of the way things are going.
It would require them to have introspection and long-term thinking in a way that is almost impossible in an authoritarian system where no one can question the boss and his cronies. And this is part of their fundamental problem, is that they can't take critiques from outside of their very strict ideology. You're either on the moving stairs with them, or you're off. There's no in between, so there's no room for criticism. So they can't do that kind of introspection. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah. Do we have any more?
I just want to bring up. I want to bring up comments that aren't always agreeing with us. So we.
Just quickly, just really sorry, just on that last point though, it is also worth pointing out that the Welsh Senedd has used a new proportional system this time around. It's the first time that the entire system has been fully proportionate. And there's been a bit of discourse as to whether it's too confusing for people to understand. I mean, more conversations will be had, but that has resulted in the complete decimation of Labour and, Plaid steaming full ahead. So,
So let's go to this comment. Sorry, 2 seconds. It's like a 2-commenter. Neck said, overall Greens can't do nothing. It's just stupid. You just killed Labour, guaranteed Reform a win. It is the results you're just stuck looking at. a little London bubble, which ain't gonna do.
Talked about St Helens that's been taken over completely by reform. We've talked about other areas that have gone reform. So we're not really just looking at a little London bubble, are we? But okay. But on the yeah, go on, Ben.
I don't think any of us live in London, do we?
I don't
anymore?
live in London.
No, none of us live in London. I think the idea that we're in a London, but it's a bit like when people say the Greens are like the party of the middle class. It's like your rhetoric's a little bit outdated.
Yeah,
I think.
I'm not. Yeah, we're not even Londoners, matey. And then Paul says the Greens are lunatics and should never be taken seriously in politics. The future is reform. Embrace it.
Well,
Sorry, am I screaming too loud?
I mean, yeah, the future is reform unless you happen to be in Yarmouth, where Restore Britain got all 10 council seats that they were contesting. I think it was the only 10 council seats they were contesting this time around. We're going to see, and actually, I'm really looking forward to this. Talking earlier about splitting votes. You know what? The Restore UK or Restore Britain, sorry. Voters in this country who, and all the bots and all the supporters who are convinced that Lowe's going to be the prime minister. You know what? I wish them all the best, because I cannot wait to see what happens to the right wing vote when they're arguing between restore and reform. In fact, there was a comment on one of the Green Party pages the other day where somebody had put vote reform, and somebody just put underneath and said, no, vote reform this time, but next time when you can vote for them, vote restore. And I thought, yeah, all right, let's wait and see that. So you know what? Bring it on. Why not?
Yeah.
Let's I wish Rupert Lowe all the best, and I hope his party succeeds. Because that 25% reform vote is going to go.
Yeah, if you want to talk about split votes, look at the right in a few months.
Yeah.
Or
Do we have any more super chats or anything?
Let me have a look.
Yeah, I'm just aware of time.
Yeah, I'm aware of time. I will probably. Oh, thank you so much, XLLXXT, for becoming a member. And I think we'll probably leave it at that for comments. Someone said that I should become a Green MP, guys.
What, you should?
Yeah, I don't think I'll be a Green MP. Well, actually, now that we're on the topic, no, I'm joking.
Immediately.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can get into politics, guys. I think I swear too much. So.
You. That's not an issue getting into politics. Angela Rayner curses all the time.
No, they might bring something up that I said on Turn Left and be like, "But do you remember when you said?" And
well, Trevor
Phillips were like, "Don't talk to me like that. Don't try that on me, Sarah. I don't want to be in that position because I'll actually lose my shit."
Just be a Reform UK MP then, because they don't vet the candidates anyway, and then you can. And then just so they won't even know that you're a socialist. They'll just look at you and they'll go, oh yeah, so brilliant. Someone that's not white, she'll do, because then it makes us look like we're not racist. Yeah, we'll give her the job straight away.
Maybe I should join the Tories or Reform.
You'll be in. Do it. You'll be in.
Guys, don't quote me on that. I'm never ever in my entire life.
And then vote for all the socialist policies. You'd be great. Have a secret pact with the Greens.
No, yeah, that would be funny. But I think I'll stick to being on Turn Left, guys.
Wow.
But yeah, I think that's probably it for the comments. Really great show.
Yeah, thanks very much. Go on, Ben.
Can I say something? There's still so many results to come in. It's taking a while for the results to come in. So all of our analysis, hopefully, because a lot of results have been declared, all of our analysis should be mostly applicable. But part of the reasons that we have been talking in generalities and about things that have already been declared, like Hackney, for example, is because we don't really know too well what the county council situation is.
But if you're watching this back on the 9th or the 10th of May, and the Lib Dems have suddenly become the largest party anywhere, and it's been a really crazy fluke, then just don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah.
We've had. I think we've had another £2 super chat from Steve just saying, "Great show, more talk shows in future, please."
Let's have a look.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah, that would be fun. But by the way, I did want to say. The one thing that I think almost made me turn on Zack Polanski was when I heard that he said he changed some lyrics to from Amen to Lib Dem, like the choir thing. Did you hear about this? Right?
No, wait. Is this actually?
Choir.
This isn't a
It's
meme.
I thought you were joking.
He changed the a set of lyrics in a song from instead of saying Amen, he changed it to like Lib Dem.
I can
This is
already
back when
see
he
the
was a Lib
headline.
Dem, right?
I can already see the headline.
Or they've already reported on it, and I was like, okay, this could potentially turn me against you, Zack. I'm
Zack
sorry,
Polanski,
but that is so
blasphemous.
embarrassing.
Yeah.
This is such a digression, but after I'd ran the London Marathon, I went to my brother's place to pick up my stuff and go meet some friends. And as I was walking into his block of flats,
I love how you just casually, after I ran the London Marathon. Like,
no, but
after I did that, I went.
I have to preface it with this because I was hobbling and I did not even turn to look back. I was that rude because I was so tired. These two people are like, "Can we just squeeze in behind you, please?" Like as we're going into the block of flats, and I was like, "Who are you?" My back was facing them. They're like, "We're actually just canvassing for the Lib Dems," and I was like, "Who?" And they were like, and then the guy behind the woman laughed because he understood my joke. Yeah. But the woman was like, "The Lib Dems," and I said, "Ugh." And then I walked away. I was like, "Why are you chatting to me about the Lib Dems? Who even are they?" It's like talking to me about Kemi. Who is she?
I love that. On a completely separate note, by the way, that some of you eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed that me and Ben are actually in the same room today. Just look behind us.
Oh my God, guys, what the hell?
We are.
Where did you get your paint
We can reach
from?
across and hold hands.
Yeah, we can.
No, wait, hang on. No, hang on.
No, wait, hang on.
Yeah.
Go to a heart.
No, fuck, you
well, no, you're there. So I don't know why it's,
Oh, okay, fair.
Yeah, it's just because it's mirrored on the screen.
It does look like we're in the same room. Our lighting is very much the same today.
It's the background. I'm not sure how that happened. But listen, thank you both very much anyway.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to go back to you, Callum. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. But yeah, obviously, for those of you that are watching, as you all know, Turn Left is a voluntary organisation. There's 5 of us. We're all volunteers, and we do this all alongside our full-time jobs. So, as many of you do not already, we always really appreciate donations here on YouTube. You can do the super chats, but you can also visit our website, turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, where you can do a monthly donation through Patreon, or you could also do one-off donations as well, and we do appreciate it. But if you haven't got the money to spend, that's totally fine. We get it. Cost of living and all that. Times are tough. So if you can't support us financially, hit the like button, give us a subscribe, and obviously share our content out with other people as well. Just before we go, I'm just going to give you a quick update. So there has been a little bit of change in some of the details since we came on air. So tally at the moment in England, Reform UK are looking at 1,407 seats, which is 14, so 1,407 seats in total and 14 councils. Labour on 939 seats with 27 councils in control. The Lib Dems on 831 seats and 15 councils. Conservatives 751 seats and 9 councils. The Greens have got 497 seats and are now in control of 4 councils. And other parties are on 232 with 59 no overall control, or councils run by other parties. Just really quickly as well, to just give you the results for Scotland, because that did just move all around in front of my eyes a moment ago. The SNP is still on 57, Labour on 17, Reform on 15, the Greens on 13. So Labour have actually gained more than the Green Party now, although they're still down 3. Greens are on 13, Conservatives are on 11, and the Liberal Democrats are on 9. That's in terms of total seats as well. Co-ops 1999 super chat, thank you so much for that. Night guys, money for the studio pot, really appreciate it. It will certainly go into the studio account. Looking forward to it. Just quickly for Wales, I don't think that's changed. So we've got Plaid on 43. Interestingly, though, talking about proportional representation, Reform are on 34 total seats in Wales. Labour on 9, the Conservatives on 7, Greens on 2, and the Lib Dems on 1. And Antifa Vegan Boy, thank you very much for the 10 Turn Left memberships. That's also another way that you can support us too. But yeah, keep an eye out. There's still some results to come in. And yeah, remember, we're all friends, and take some of our debate with a pinch of salt. Sarah's in my ear saying, "We're all friends. We are all friends." But we are. But listen, thank you so much for all of you, for all of your support, and for joining us this evening. Please, can one of our wonderful community members pop a link in the chat if you haven't already for the Discord as well, and enjoy your chat afterwards. Where you can all moan about my terrible takes and playing devil's advocate. As I saw the Michael Walker comparison again. I see those. No, it's all good fun. Yeah, no, it's cool. But listen, if you want to support us, like I say, you can do so on our website, and hit the subscribe button as well. Share our content and support us. It's Friday, so we will be back on Monday, which is the 11th of May. And yeah, we'll see you then. Thank you very much for coming along, and that's it for this very special episode of Election Island. Yeah, thank you very much, and good night.